Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. I'm your host, Joe Emilio, and tonight we have a very exciting show. First off, my co-host tonight is Koketso Resane. Ladies and gentlemen, you might know him from Patriot. He's also a co-host on that channel. He's going to join me for a full two and a half hour show, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of which, later on tonight at 8 p.m., I'm joined by none other than Big Daddy Liberty and Nolu Maki as we talk about what might be a triggering topic for some people. The problem with absent fathers in South Africa. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at Ian Cameron and Action Society, what they've been up to recently today, talking about some very interesting things in South Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, stick around. We'll be right back. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. And as promised, my co-host for this evening is none other than Koketso Resane. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Joe. Look, contrary to popular belief, I'm actually very shy, so I could never do what you do, and that is tell jokes in front of people. Yeah, and hopefully make them laugh. I'm not that funny, but yeah, great to be here.
No, it's all good, man. It does take a special kind of crazy to be able to go up on stage and tell jokes. But it's a lot of fun. And yeah, thanks for letting or bringing that up because, ladies and gentlemen, tickets are available right now. You can go right now in the link in the description or the pinned comment in the live chats and you can buy tickets. Please, tickets are already going. I'm so impressed because, Koketsu, you stay in Joburg, right? Or
Yeah.
like Gauteng area. So I don't know what it's like over there when you have a show or whatever. There's a big show happening, but I think the entertainment life is quite good in a sense because people, I mean, you're out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else to do, right? Cape Town, there's so much to do. There's wine tasting. You can go to a game drive. You can go to the beach. You can go to town. You can go wherever, right? There's a lot of things. And
Yeah.
then on top of that, the entertainment business as well, where there's theaters and all that stuff. So when you do a show in the Western Cape, I don't know about Gauteng, but in the Western Cape, nobody buys tickets until like an hour
So
before the show.
they rock up at the door, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to have tickets that are sold so far in advance already is a good sign. I'm holding thumbs here.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for those of you who've bought tickets. And Gavin there saying he's got his. So thank you so much, Gavin. And yeah, we'll please go and come watch because it's directed by Barry Hilton, and we've already been working on the script. It's so funny. So please, guys, come and have a good laugh with me. And unfortunately, Barry won't be able to make it that evening because he's going to be in Zimbabwe, of all places, performing. But hey, he goes everywhere. So anyway, enough about me and enough about the punt. Koketso, man. How's things over at Patriot, man? Are you guys are on a break right now, right?
Break's officially over, so expect us back any day now.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
yeah, but I believe, yeah, the usual audience has been seeing us as individuals, at least on the different platforms. I mean, I'm here now,
Yeah.
but yeah, expect us on either Big Daddy Liberty, Conscious Caracal. There's a laundry list really where you can find each one of us as individuals, I guess. But yeah, Man Patriot itself is coming back soon and strong. One note though, all the vids have been pulled off YouTube and they're on the website. So if you actually want to see some of our historical content, go over through to manpatriot.com and yeah, have a look at the videos there. You don't have to watch, of course, you can just listen And yeah, have fun listening to this voice of mine, Dumos, of course, and of course Mzuzo. So you got a Xhosa guy, a Zulu guy, a Tswana guy. Don't say we don't represent everyone.
Fantastic, man. Yeah, I think, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't yet, please go check out Man Patriot. Very underrated YouTube channel. I think you guys have some great content. I love your history stuff that you. I mean, you're a history buff, Koketso. For those who may not know, and I think it's very knowledgeable, fair, and I love. When you guys get together and you start analyzing, what's happening in South Africa. For those of you who don't know about it, please go check out Manpatria for fair and funny, sometimes quite funny content on what's happening in South Africa. Any topics to look forward to that you guys are covering?
Well, we're probably going to hit the ground running again with a lot of, yeah, the usual current affairs, of course. But seeing that we're in the second half of the year, we're probably going to touch quite a bit on the ruling party going forward with that elective conference of theirs coming up as well. So this is around about the time when you start hearing scandals coming out and, breaking news, love affairs, money hidden under the mattress, you name it, it's probably going to come up and we're going to have a fun time chewing on all of that.
Fantastic. I just want to address one comment that's come through here, which is from Helen. Is the show coming to Pretoria? Maybe next year sometime. Not this year. Definitely not this year, but maybe next year. I do plan on hopefully taking the show around to different venues across South Africa. So we'll see what we can come up with. I might need some suggestions. I know that Ronaldo wants me to come and perform at Tapas at some point in PE or Kabeja, but we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, so today, Koketso, I was invited to a press conference that was held by Action Society. And it was I have linked the entire press conference in the description, and by the way, I've also linked Manpatria and Koketso's Twitter in the description as well. But it was a press conference I really wasn't prepared for emotionally, because there's a lot of topics that were covered during that press conference that I feel very tough to talk about, but needed to be talked about, much like our conversation that we're going to have later tonight. But this one was mainly tackling this woman who, her name is Janelle, and she horrible victim of GBV. Horrible. Like, this man has done unthinkable things to this woman. She has photographs to prove it. He's like crushed her arm. At one point, he crushed her face. I mean, some of the stories she was saying is like, it's like, how are you still alive? Like, that's like this guy, and the thing is, this guy she wasn't the first girl, she was the second. He's gone on to do it to another girl, and he's done it to a girl before him. And then you start asking yourself, well, why didn't you go to police? And this is kind of what this press conference was about, is showing the failures of the justice system. And I will say this because Ian says it as well. Not all cops are bad. There are some cops that are trying their utmost best to hold people accountable and to get justice. The issue is the leadership and the infrastructure. There's some of these places don't have pens, their computers don't work, they're out of ink. Yeah. Like, all these small little things that just make it even more difficult for a good police officer to do their job. So I want to look at a clip, and then we can discuss it, where Ian was asked about missing dockets, which does happen quite often in the police system. And unfortunately for Janelle, that's exactly what happened to her. Her docket has just gone missing. So let's have a look at this clip.
In cases, especially cases such as GBV.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we have inquired formally with Delft Station already. As you saw, the response was quite poor. What we've now done is that we're going to start with a process to go the IPID route, to say that there must be some kind of an investigation to determine where the negligence happened. But the troublesome thing of this is it basically means quite a bit of work needs to be done from scratch. Statements need to be redone. I mean, there's literally a whole lot of information that is just gone now. It's missing. Yeah. And remember, something that's very important about this, and I want to say it very blatantly today, is that it's not just about Janelle's case. Remember that Janelle's case, for one offender that hurt so many other women, could actually have made the sentence or the punishment for that perpetrator even worse. But now justice is being denied because of one docket that went missing. So we're going to go that route. Obviously, and again, I want to emphasize it, a lot of work was done by the police on this case. So it's kind of a catch-22 to them. They're hurting themselves. It's an own goal, because you're literally doing all the work, and then you end up losing the docket, and you didn't scan the docket and put it on the necessary system to keep track of it. So it just purely doesn't make sense to me.
That's just a comment.
So yeah, there you go. You see him discussing the missing dockets, which unfortunately does happen quite often. Koketso, your thoughts on this, maybe?
Yeah, look, I think I'm at a point where I'm now inclined to believe that maybe, perhaps, maybe dockets go missing because there actually isn't a will by the powers that be to prevent dockets from going missing. Possibly because it may just be a lucrative side hustle to, exchange money for the favor of making your docket disappear if you are the accused. So I'm starting to believe that. And maybe let me play devil's advocate here. For all the blame and etc. that people like to put on Begicele, for example, let me move away from that for a moment and then say that, look, let's just say in the past 15 years alone, we've had multiple police commissioners, we've had about 3 or so police ministers, and much of the problems remain, if not, they're getting worse. So perhaps the problem isn't at the top, like we easily like to point out. We are human after all, and we like to attach a single face or a single name to everything that is wrong within a particular subset. But perhaps that's not where the problem is. Maybe the problem is a lot lower down, in that the society culture in the police service, in the men and women in blue, is that they don't take their job seriously to the point where they are not trying to prevent something like a docket happening, or preventing a colleague from going off and selling the service of making dockets disappear. However it happens, however they do it, perhaps the problem is right over there. And I say this because I've said this before here and elsewhere, that, my personal belief is that in a country with higher unemployment, let's face the reality here. A lot of people are not in the police because they have benevolent intention to prevent crime, to keep their communities safe, to help those who have been victimized, etc. A lot of people are in the South African police service. Same goes for the various metro policing. They're there because it guarantees you a salary and allows you to take home a paycheck and live your life and build something with that money. That's why they're there. And that's why you hear stories of, if the crime really, if the robbers are really armed to the teeth, the police won't actually come out. They're going to wait a few hours or even come tomorrow because they are not willing to put their life at risk. So maybe the problem is actually over there, that things like missing dockets, etc. We are here because the men and women in blue aren't interested in actually fulfilling the function of policing. That, I think, it's hard to measure, of course, but perhaps that's where we need to look at things. And again, the real losers here are the victims.
Yeah, of
Victims
course.
who don't get justice, and it's not even the justice that's the bad thing. The worst of it all really is the lack of a credible threat that criminals will actually be, firstly, apprehended, and then secondly, sentenced, and then thirdly, actually serve their prison term. There's no credible threat of that happening, and hence people get away with crime and they continue doing it. And again, if someone is a criminal, let's not assume they commit the crime once. They typically do it over and over and over again. And as long as there is that lack of credible threat of them being incarcerated, at least, they'll continue doing it. And that's squarely on the men and women in blue. Not so much even their bosses upstairs and all of that. That comes down to lack of patrols, lack of infrastructure in the police station, and a lack of a work ethic in the police station as well. It's quite a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I do think that there's some truth to what you're saying there. Ian, I don't know if I have the clip. There's another clip I'm going to show. I don't know if he mentions it in that clip, but he did mention today that another aspect of it, kind of in line with what you're saying, is some of these policemen or policewomen, the ones that are trying to do good work, they get very demotivated very quickly because there's over 300 dockets per police per policeman or policewoman, and so imagine having 300 dockets, 300 files that you have to go through. That's 300 cases that you have to go through and work on, as I don't know, I don't think it's even humanly possible. At the same time, you're dealing with new cases that are coming in, new dockets that are coming in, new issues that are coming in, and you don't have the right pen, and you can't even print. There's nowhere to scan some of these dockets. It's very demotivating because you're not given the tools to effectively do your job. So that's why sometimes when women go to, and please, I'm not excusing this behavior at all. I'm not trying to excuse this behavior. I'm just saying that this is kind of the reality is, you go up to a police officer, a woman that's a victim to GBV, and they don't care because they know there's nothing they can do. There's almost nothing they can do because their hands are tied. It's like, well, I could take your information, I could do this, but I can't scan it. I can't do this. Our filing system is a mess. There's papers until the ceiling. The police guy knows from the beginning that nothing's going to be done. And it's not that they don't care. It's just almost like they've given up in a sense, which, is in line with what you're saying.
Yeah. So, how do we fix this? Do you flood the police stations with additional staff? The same police station that is struggling to allocate desks to each of the officers and is struggling to put fuel in the patrol cars.
Yeah. No, I don't think there's a simple solution. I do try and believe that, and Ian kind of touched on this as well. We need to get in touch with the good cops that are in the system, and the community needs to work with them to assist them. And Ian was saying, even if it's something like a soup and a coffee, it goes a long way to give them motivation to do their jobs and stuff. I'm not saying you must do this with all the cops. He was specific in saying, like, there are cops that want to do the work, and if you can just keep their morale up, it will make the world a difference. And then not just that, but you build a community with other security agencies and stuff like that are a little bit more reliable than the cops. But at least the security companies can come and protect the people and they have rules and stuff that they can deal with whoever's done the crime and take it to the cops. And unfortunately, we are in a situation where the community does need to almost educate themselves to know that if there's a crime committed, they need to capture the evidence, they need to bag it, and they need to present it to the cops, even though they may not do it correctly. At least that's been done, and document every step of the way. When you fill out a docket, for example, take pictures of it, because then if it goes missing, at least you can go back to your pictures on your phone and be able to copy it again, and we shouldn't have to be in this situation. This is almost ridiculous to even say this, but
in 2022.
Yeah, in 2022, exactly. But I really want to get to what Ian says next. So I have to put a bit of context to this. The press conference that was done today, this was their ad for it, a cause not to celebrate. How the South African criminal justice system fails GBVF, victims. Janelle Lato's story. That's the lady that told her story, and this was the flyer for the press conference. Now, one of the journalists there had a bit of an issue with the wording of a cause not to celebrate. He said, that might be a little bit insensitive to some women because some of them are proud because they were part of the struggle way back when, and da-da-da-da-da. So a bit of a woke journalist. And to his credit, he didn't mean any malice by it. I think the question, someone would have thought maybe that. So I think there is a bit of credence to his question, or credibility to his question. But even though it's a small amount, I think it was a good question for Ian to answer, to address those people who might think that way, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So this was the first part of his response. It was a 2-question thing. First was the sensitivity of the campaign. And the second part of the question was relationship with SAPS. So here's the answer that Ian gave to the first part.
It's a brilliant question. So I want to start with the one about nothing to celebrate. Last week I was in Mbekweni, and on Tuesday evening I spent time with junior leaders from schools in the Winelands areas to speak about challenges that young ladies and young men face in especially rural townships. And there was a matric girl there that goes to school in Mbekweni. And you know what she said to me? She said to me that by between 5 o'clock and 6 p.m. in the day, her and her friends can't be outside anymore, but that the men can still be outside because it's too dangerous for them. And if I ask any woman in here, if you feel safe walking on any of these streets when the sun sets, even throughout the day, you can be my testimony for that. They don't feel safe. Again, and this is what I said in terms of the police 3-4 weeks ago, we need to stop politicizing crime. There's great credentials, important credentials that need to be highlighted in terms of political movements, etc. And I acknowledge that completely. My fight is that today, as we sit here, someone is probably being raped in South Africa. There are going to be between 130 and 150 rapes today in South Africa. Tomorrow, another 130 to 150 rapes. And that's the fight that I want to fight, regardless of political affiliation. So I don't mean it with political disrespect, not at all. The reality that we have now is that women and children face a severe onslaught in South Africa, whether urban or rural. And the interesting thing is whether rich or poor. The difference is that in poorer communities, it's often forgotten because you become a number, because people are so heavily populated, you just become a number. Last week in New Crossroads, a lady said to me the following. We were patrolling with them, and she said, Ian, we call the police when someone gets shot, but it's not even that the police are late. They simply don't come. We end up organizing a car in the community. We pick up the victim and take the victim to a hospital. And that's the reality.
Yeah, so again, hard facts there, and I think Ian handled that woke question perfectly. Again, giving facts. Koketso, your thoughts maybe?
Yeah, I guess Ian is a bigger man than me, because I would have said we're dealing with serious issues here and you're bickering about the choice of words on a poster.
Trust me, I wanted to, the guy was behind me and I wanted to say that so badly. Like, I really wanted to just be like, dude, really? Yeah. You're worried about... But I mean, like, what are you supposed to say? Because in some cases, like, we can be nice about the situation, but then nothing gets heard and nothing gets done. At least sometimes we do need to be a bit hard-ass, for lack of a better term, about these situations. I mean, we just heard Ian say that girls in certain communities cannot be out in the evening. They don't even feel safe to walk their own streets. You want to bitch to me about, but some women fought the fight and, it's Women's Month and we have to be considerate and blah, blah. Well, what about these women that can't go out and be in their own community safely?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm not ever concerned about the optics of things, and perhaps that's what makes me unsuited for this kind of work. I mean, I'll use Mandela Day as an example. Last month, yeah, we're in August. Yeah, it was last month. You have people going around almost policing individuals about what did you do for Mandela Day, and I then come out and said, well, I didn't do anything specific for Mandela Day, and then I'm the bad one. But when I start talking about how why should we wait for Mandela Day to actually address the social injustices in our community, help the needy, uh, be friendly, be a good person in general? Why does that need to be done on a specific day? And I ask this because those who do it year long are never given the kind of attention that they really should be getting. It's people like Ian Cameron. Instead, what they're made subject to is, someone's always fishing for one bad half sentence that they would have mentioned so they can pull out a snippet and then go after the individual. And we saw this happen with Ian Cameron.
Yeah.
People are going out about A, his race, B, his affiliation or previous work with AfriForum, which we know in the mainstream media as the devil, of course. They're going after that, but no one actually says, but what does this guy actually do? They don't know the kind of work he does, and this would have been a perfect opportunity to, at the very least, if you're going to go after the man, um, interrogate the work that he's doing, the great work that he's doing for victims of gender-based violence particularly. But
Yeah.
they don't want to go there. Instead, they'd rather go after the man, not realizing that you remove people like Ian out of the picture and you actually putting a lot of people at a disadvantage. So, and that's the problem with politicizing everything, of course, and
Mm.
also being politically correct. He's laying down the facts and saying it like it is, which people are not willing to do, because I get that these are grim numbers when you look at the statistics, but at the very same time, there's a lot of grateful families out there that are grateful to Ian and his team for the work that they're doing. And they'll tell you a completely different story about the man, but no one wants to
Absolutely.
give that air, of course, because that isn't what sells in the news. So I'm actually disappointed that someone from the media would have gone out and tried to pick out a snippet so they can publish something damning about Ian the following day or even later that afternoon,
Mm.
instead of actually deciding, right, how can we use our platform to actually spread the work that you're doing and help not just the communities, but you never know when tomorrow you might be the victim.
Yeah.
So that's what I wished would have been happening, but it's not happening, and we're here now. And hey,
Yeah, well, I'll give credit to the other journos. They did do their job well. They asked a few questions and a few good questions. There's questions about what do we do about the dockets, what's the solution. Again, you can catch all that unedited, uncut conference at the Alternative News Network YouTube channel. Link is in the description if you want to see it all. It's also Janelle's story there, which is about 20 minutes in. Ian opens up the conference and gives a bit of stats, and then after that, Janelle says her story. I encourage a lot of people to please go and watch that because it is a very moving, tough to listen to, but very moving story. And I think if a lot more people speak out, I think change might happen. And I'll keep an eye on her story as well because I would like to know what happens. But Janelle says as well, Action Society has helped her tremendously since they've taken on her case. So final clip before we run out of time. It's 30 minutes into the show, ladies and gentlemen. At 8 o'clock, Big Daddy Liberty and Nolu Maki will be joining us as we tackle the issue of absent fathers and the problem with absent fathers in South Africa in particular. So we're going to be talking about that a bit later. But right now, we're going to look at the final clip from of Ian Cameron from Action Society as he tackles the second part of the journalist's question, which was, why not have a more, and I think he was referencing the Sihle, Becky Sihle and Ian confrontation, if I can put it that way, that happened a few weeks ago, because he basically said, like, why not try and have a better relationship with the head of SAPS and so on. So this was Ian's response to that, and yeah.
In terms of the relationship with the police, ground level relationship is amazing. In fact, after what happened 4 weeks ago, many of the members on ground level, especially in the township, said, thank goodness, because we are tired of working in a dictatorship. We want our complaints to be heard. Lucinda is sitting here, she knows many of the FCS people. There are incredible people still wearing the uniform. And it's difficult for me to sit here and to name and shame, because I think it's important that we do that, and I agree with Lucinda. But the problem that I have is, unfortunately, good people are going to get hurt through us doing that. But we need to acknowledge the fact that we really have a crisis. In terms of the relationship with the Minister of Police, I'm open for any discussion. What he said after what happened, he said to me, or he said to the media, we could have done things differently. No, Mr. Minister. I wouldn't do anything differently from what I said that day, because nothing has changed since 4 weeks ago in Gugulethu. I was there last week and the week before, and all 4 vans with flat tires are still standing in the parking lot in Gugulethu station. They don't have any extra resources. So I wouldn't do that differently. In terms of the broader relationship with the police, we've made many attempts. Since Nathi Mteto was the Minister of Police, Nathi Nhleko, Fikile Mbalula, and Minister Beki Cele, we have never received a response. Every time we have to go through the civilian secretariat, and then someone will come back to us there, if they do, or we have to follow a legal route. So what we find, build a relationship on ground level, because there are amazing people trying to do so much with little resources.
There you go. I mean, that tackles a little bit of the solution part to this issue at the end there. But yeah, you heard it from Ian himself. Nothing 4 weeks ago, where Beki Cele was figuratively slapped in the face, and still nothing done at Gugulethu.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Is there a will to do anything by the men and women in blue? I don't think it's there. So you can highlight their inefficiencies, their inadequacies, their incapabilities all day long. The reason nothing's going to change is because there's no will to do it. A lot of them are there to just get a salary, because you need an income to live in this world. They're not there to even keep the police station clean. That's not why they're there. They're just there to pick up a salary, and that's to the detriment of you and I.
Yeah.
We the actual victims here. Effectively, we are on our own.
Yeah.
And I like what Ian has mentioned there. That this has been a thing for 3-4 police ministers already. So you can't change hands at the top and then assume that changes will follow suit. That's not necessarily the case. It's bottom up, I believe, in terms of the broader problem. And perhaps we need to look in the mirror and say it might just be our fault as society. We create the kind of individuals that then easily become policemen, and we sit back and we allow it. Maybe we do need to look in the mirror. But yeah, I am glad that there are people doing something out there, not just civil society organizations, NGOs, but even something as basic as a neighborhood watch, or even a neighborhood WhatsApp group. Again, those that are in these sort of spaces, I'm pretty sure are very grateful for them. Whether others' opinions about these things are negative or not, if you're part of such a forum, I'm pretty sure you're very grateful, because they will likely come to your aid a lot quicker than the police would, unless the police is part of that forum themselves as well.
No, absolutely. Look, I think the issue is very multi-layered on many different levels. I mean, there is so much wrong with the system. With the system, with leadership, with ANC itself. Gavin said it himself. Sihle and the ANC are corrupt and useless. Nothing will be done. And look, I think at the moment right now, you see things like this. I'm going to pop up a quick tweet. ANC is trying to rally now. We've got the ANC's elections coming up for the president or what have you, and look at them. They're trying to jump on the GBV plus F They're saying join the protests against illegal immigrants, zamas zamas and rapists on Wednesday, the 3rd of August, outside Krugersdorp Magistrate Court at 8 a.m., calling for law enforcement to shut down illegal mines. Join the protest action. And
Right.
Sky ZA, for anybody who doesn't know, like she always has great tweets, and
You're biased.
I might be biased, but it's still a good tweet. She says the governing party is protesting against government for not governing. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
These are the people we appoint in power, right, to protect us, to make sure that what they are saying we should protest against doesn't happen. And now they're calling for a protest. What monkey
like I
world do
said-
we live in?
Like I said, this is optics. The people who are sending this message out have got some of the necessary individuals on speed dial. But it's optics, right? So you must be seen saying something. You must be seen putting out a statement. You must be seen running a social media campaign. You must be seen outside the police station calling for an end to violence. It's all optics. Meanwhile, the people who have the power to make the decisions, you're a lot closer to them than I am. You have some of them on speed dial. So they're very accessible. So it's all optics, and in the end, nothing will be done. Look, I also have to say, right, isn't this the exact sort of thing that the Put South Africa First guys were getting heat from, or getting heat about? Why are they rallying and massing around an issue of illegal immigration that's very xenophobic, that's un-African, etc., etc.? Wasn't it ANC's people going around saying exactly that about them? And now they kind of want to, pour a little bit of water in that cup and use the same oros really to try and rally support. So it's very hypocritical, I guess. But when you do it, it's bad. When I do it, it's brilliant. It's great. It's amazing. It's awesome.
And I just love how they're calling for law enforcement to shut down illegal mines. Like I would love to see them or anyone else try and call for law enforcement when it's any other protest that the ANC isn't behind. Law enforcement, obviously, I think law enforcement, their hands are tied when it comes to other protests. It's almost like, okay, law enforcement, because we're ANC and we want to protest, you guys can protest with us. But any other protest, you're not allowed to.
It's like fees must fall, remember?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. 100%. So, I mean, this was tweeted by the African National Congress, of course. And it's, I just can't believe what I'm seeing. Instead of organizing a protest, right, why don't you fire Beketele, right? That'd be a good first step, right? And do your job. Get someone in there that's competent and can fix what is already a sinking ship, unfortunately, and try and salvage what you can from it. I think this is all, like you just said, politicking. We're trying to look at us. We're trying to do good. It's just like Cyril going to ESCOM. We don't need Cyril to go to ESCOM.
Yeah, I just want the lights on.
Like him going to ESCOM did not give us no load shedding. You know what I mean? Like he's saying, oh, we're going to have meetings with businessmen and stuff like that. The meetings should have been had like 7 years ago. Like only now?
Look, and this is actually, so I've got about 4 primary gripes with the government. I won't go into them now. That will require easily a 20-minute rant solo, but I won't get into it. But one of my gripes with government is the people in political positions, in administrative positions, municipal and otherwise, right? The vast majority of them, they actually don't have the skill to do the job that they are employed to do or appointed to do.
Yeah.
They don't have it in them. It's really that simple. That's my personal belief. Others will differ. They'll say that no, they do. They just don't want to. I genuinely believe that they actually don't have it in them. Not everyone can lead. Not everyone can manage. Some people on the chessboard of life are meant to be nothing more than pawns,
Yeah.
and for every one bishop, there's many pawns, right? So some people are just meant to be pawns, and if you try to put the pawn in a position of power, influence, management, leadership, things are bound to go wrong, and I think that's exactly what's happening. So I don't believe they have it in them to actually, at an operational level, actually do the solution they like to talk about at conferences, behind closed doors, whatever goes on at St. George Hotel, of course. They come up with all these grand plans, and the president announces task force after task force with people appointed. Even if he announces a new task force with, 9 people in there, 8 of them actually don't have it in them to firstly make a sound decision around what to do, and then more importantly, actually go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
And then you get the actual experts who are then going to say, all right, fine, I'll put up my hand. I will come in and do the solution. I will get in the mud. I will do the dirty work. I will grift. I will do what needs to be done to see us across the line.
Yeah.
And then they're just flat out ignored, for many reasons. A, no, you're not a cater. No, your skin isn't dark enough. No, you don't know the right people. No, you are immune to giving me a kickback, etc., etc., etc. And that's why nothing's ever done about it. That's one of my gripes. And remember, I said I have 4. That's literally number 3 on my list of gripes. The people that are there just don't have it in them to make or to actually do the solution that they keep talking about, and that's why there's nothing to show for it. There's actually the saying that every time you invite South Africa to these global conferences where governments send delegates, whether it could be an environmental conference, it could be a conference around energy, transport, you name it, name the sector. Every time you send South African delegates there, it's going to be full of government people, and then they're going to get there with PowerPoint presentations that have the coat of arms, of course, and all they're really going to do is tell us about what we are going to do.
Yeah.
It's never what we've done. And that's the contrast between South Africa and even some of our African counterparts, namely your Rwanda, your Kenya, etc. They go on stage and tell the world what they have done and what they have achieved and how they achieved it and how they did it. What South Africa typically does is they go there and tell the world what we are going to do. No one ever comes back 5 years later and says, right, 5 years ago, you said you were going to do this. How far has that gone? Think about all these bus lanes that have been getting built in the town, in cities, particularly in Joburg. Unlike in Cape Town, where the bus lanes actually work and are effective and are actually affordable, etc. In Joburg, near where I live, there's been a corridor bus rail system from Tembisa that's supposed to connect all the way through to OR Tambo International. It's been under construction for who knows how long. I hear it's a very similar story if you go to Rustenburg as well. There's been a bus rapid transit system that's been under construction for close to a decade, if not more. So it's never about what have you done and how can we improve on it. The only way I see things happening is if Sepp Blatter comes back and awards South Africa another World Cup, and suddenly we'll get things done very quickly, like we did with the Gautrain. But apart from that, nah.
Yeah, that's also very true. Although apparently there are some shady deals with that too. But I think while you were chatting, you reminded me of something. Saying that these guys just like to talk. Ian told me something very interesting today. Is that he was basically, when Bekitsele shouted at him during that Mbiza, that was a community thing. There were a lot of he was number 13 of 20 other speakers, okay? So they let 10 speak, they had a break, and then 10 others spoke, and he was third in the second half. But he told me today that most, if not all, were either, black or colored from that community, and mainly women. And that these women laid into Bekitsele 10 times harder. They were shouting at him. They were like really passionate and angry with Bekitsele, but he just sat there and took it. But white man stands up, because obviously Bekitsele, that's how he took it, and says pretty much, Ian said pretty much what the other communities were saying, just in
Yeah.
passionately as well, but he wasn't crying and he wasn't, necessarily shouting his lungs out. And yet Bekele chose him, not the other members of the community, him. And I think that's very telling for the kind of government that we have in power. They don't. That story showed me two things. One, it's race is always going to be their playing card. Okay, they're always going to play the race card. Number two, if the opportunity presents itself. Number two, they actually don't give a damn about ordinary South Africans, because Bekele never once addressed what those other people said in that Mbizo. He never addressed it in any way, shape, or form. He just attacked the white man. How dare the white man stand up to me, And that's all he cared about. And that just shows you how the ANC kind of operates as well, because they don't care about South Africans. They will say what they need to say when the time is right, like we're seeing now with Cyril going to ESCOM and this protest apparently that's going to happen. It's all a facade. It's all a show, because they're grasping and struggling to hold on to power. And I don't know if you know this, Koketso, quickly before our guest joined, but recently there's been a push for the basic income grant and increasing the SASSA grants as well to 1,000 rand or something like that. Buying votes. Votes flat out, no doubt about it, because at the moment there's more people on SASSA grants than there are employed. And that's a scary situation to be in.
Yeah, it is scary, and it is buying votes, and I actually tweeted about this yesterday, that, all this talk of funding a basic income grant, because the big question has always been around, where are you going to get the money to fund basic income grants, aka universal basic income in other countries? Where are you going to get the money? You're already taxing business to their teeth. You're already taxing, I don't even want to say high net worth individuals, pretty much, I can't remember the exact numbers, but by any standard, once you are earning on a monthly basis, once you are grossing, I believe, over 21,300 Rand, right about there, you start, the amount of tax you're paying is actually, by any measurement, by a global benchmark at least, it's a lot, especially considering what you're getting in return. And now they're saying they want to go up to the top 5% to fund the basic income grant. That top 5% are typically your executives. It could also be, owners or directors of big business. Long story short, these are the people who are creating jobs. Someone who's earning 60, 70,000 Rand a month, most likely is also employing someone to help with domestic chores back at home. Maybe employing a gardener. These are people who are creating employment, either at a personal level or in their business, where they have some semblance of equity or influence. Now you want to tax them further. And in doing that, you're actually pushing people away. You're going to incentivize people who have been sitting on the fence about whether to emigrate or not. You're going to incentivize people to even dodge tax. When you find creative ways to dodge tax, the real loser here is the state, because they're going to get less out of you than they would have been if you were not dodging the tax. Even in some basic form, you're going to incentivize people to change their tax residency. I'll take my company, I'll just set it up in Mauritius, and our local operations will just be a local subsidiary, So you incentivize that sort of behavior, and in turn, what you're then doing is you actually reducing your income by increasing the tax burden on that top percent as a means to get more income. So you actually achieve the opposite of what you wanted. And like many economists say, the people who create these policies are never the ones who pay the price. Because very rarely does a policy go away once it's been put in, and that's something South Africa is struggling with. I mean, Botswana's just dropped their VAT from 14% to 12% as a means of curbing inflation. Do you think the South African government is even considering it?
No, they're considering
Absolutely not.
increasing the tax. As I read an article the other day, they want to increase the
Yeah,
tax to 16 rand, or I think, or 17 rand.
16%. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
17%, sorry, or 16%. So they want to increase the.
exactly. So do you see the difference in ethos? The South African government, there's whispers of them thinking of increasing VAT by another percent, while our neighbors understand that no, you are going to in time actually shoot yourself in the foot. So let's decrease VAT as a way of keeping more money in the pockets of the end consumer, because that's where VAT is charged, on the end consumer, not necessarily on the business. So that's the
So what you're
difference.
saying is, sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is we all need to move to Botswana. That's what I'm hearing.
I mean,
There's the solution, ladies and gentlemen. Move to Botswana. You might have more opportunities there.
you pay less for fuel. We know that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think they still
Yeah.
have electricity, don't they?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure
they
they
do.
do.
They do. And I could be wrong on this, but for a long time they were procuring electricity from SA. And Cyril, in his energy-based family meeting the other day, was saying that they're looking at buying back energy from some of our neighbors.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, if I'm not, I could be mistaken, so don't take me up on that. But if I'm right, that means that in the time that Botswana was buying electricity from South Africa, they were planning for a way to stop buying electricity, get it on their own. And now they've already gone past that precipice where they're in a position to actually sell back some of it. What kind of a loser does South Africa have to be to give someone a resource and end up having to not just stop giving them the resource, but procure it back? That's
Yeah.
the kind of behavior. That's the kind of thing that happened between Zimbabwe and Zambia, where Mugabe kicks out all the farmers. A lot of them went to Zambia, just across the border, and the net effect after a few years, Zimbabweans are buying food from Zambian farmers who used to be Zimbabwean farmers who got kicked out. It's the exact type of scenario.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. It is kind of funny. Like,
It's funny, but it's not funny. But
no,
it's funny.
yeah, it's funny, but it's not funny, but it's funny. Like the thing, the thing is, like, I can only imagine what a Zimbabwean farmer must have felt like. First off, you work so hard on the land, and then you get kicked out of your own country, or you leave because you have no other choice. You go to Zambia, you now build this whole thing, then on your door comes knocking the old government that you ran away from. Like, we have some of your food. I mean, as a Zimbabwean, I would have been like, what the hell is going on?
And we know this, right? That it's not the tools that make the man. It's the man, or it's not it's not the tools that make the man or that make you good at whatever you're doing. It's you who actually makes use of those to
Yes.
be good at it in the first place. So
Yeah.
but people just don't get that. I mean, in photography circles, we say this to guys who are coming up all the time. Because when someone's coming up and they come to me as a photographer and they say, "Hey, man, I really like your pictures. What camera do you use?" Now you have to tell them, no, it's not about the camera you use. Don't worry about that. Worry about your technique. You could use your phone if you have to. So it's the same thing with the whole land situation. You can take the land, but that doesn't mean you know how to work it. And even if you know how to work it, that doesn't mean you know how to profit from it either. Because that's
Exactly.
two different things.
And again, like, that's, oh man, the land issue. I mean, we can go into a whole nother discussion for another hour about the land issue. But I mean, just very quickly, I mean, it's been proven, it's been seen. Unfortunately, corporate media doesn't cover it that much. But those that were given land, to use and farm, and promised by government, oh, we'll give you the tools and what you need, blah blah. The people have been waiting over like 5-10 years for a tractor or what have you, and then at the end of the day they have to go and try and make it work, and they can't because, well, they just don't have the infrastructure, or the nearest town to buy that kind of stuff is like miles away or kilometers away.
So the land becomes a burden now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's supposed to be an asset, but now it's a burden.
Yeah, so even the government that wants to give the people back the land, right, is making it difficult for people to make use of the land.
Right.
This is the ANC government, ladies and gentlemen. Like, in case you're watching from somewhere else across the pond, on either side. That this is pretty much the government, the ANC, that promised to liberate us. And that's something else that pisses me off just before we go on break, is they're still carrying on about the liberation movement. And I'm like, I thought you were liberated in 94. Like, wasn't that the end? Like, what are you still being liberated from? You're in power. Like, you have the power now to do, and they do whatever they want. But I'm saying that they're in power. What do you, I don't understand. But anyway.
Yeah.
We do have to go on a bit of a break, ladies and gentlemen. Our one guest is in the green room. I'm hoping our other guest will still join. I think he will. So far, he hasn't told me that he won't. So we'll quickly go on a 5-minute break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back with Nolu Maki. Koketso Resane will stay with me, and we'll be joined by Big Daddy Liberty, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be talking about the problem with absent fathers in South Africa. It's going to be quite a spicy conversation, but a conversation that needs to be had regardless. So, ladies and gentlemen, hang in there for me for another 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's break time. Don't go anywhere, I want to share some announcements. Firstly, as you saw, I have a one-man show stand-up comedy special. Please book your tickets as soon as possible. There is limited seating. Tickets also include a meal. Oh, and the show is directed by the legend Barry Hilton. Avoid disappointment and book your tickets now. Just follow the link in the description, ladies and gentlemen, where you will find all the information. And secondly, please consider becoming a member to this channel. It goes a long way to supporting me and the channel. And for as little as $60, you can become a member to this channel and get exclusive perks. Just check out the join button below for all the details. And if you don't want to become a member, that's absolutely fine. Don't forget that you can also donate by giving a super chat, or sasa chats as we call them on this channel, or you can use super thanks to also donate to this channel. All donations are greatly appreciated. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are just tuning in, don't go anywhere. This is just a short break. The show will be starting again shortly, so enjoy the rest of the show. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet already. Thanks.
Don't wanna sleep in, cause I got something to prove. I gotta take what I hate and finally make a move. I think of you and all the shit you don't do. Well, I'ma make hella sure that I don't become you. I have no regrets, yeah, I'll tie up my chest. I'll never forget what it's like to be in debt. Been stabbed in the back bed, I'll show you what happens. Pass me the mic and I'll show you with action. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you can never own. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you can never own. So fight and die for the things you know you love. Do what you think is right, and see life do what you want. So fight and die for the things you know you love. Do what you think is right, and see life do what you want. So give me all the scars, I'm a human being. Cover them with tattoos so you can't see. Knew it from the start, you had problems with me and the things I could be, I just wish I had seen. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you can never own. I feel this pain, you already know. Turn that to gains, let my money show. I've got these things that I can't let go. Watch me turn this life into something that you can never own. So fight and die for the things you know you love. Do what you think is right and see life do what you want. So fight and die for the things you know you love. Do what you think is right and see life.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Joe Emilio Show. I'm your host, Joe Emilio, and I am joined by legends, really, in our little community. Koketso Resane is still with me, and of course, Nolu Maki has joined me once again, and the legend, the one, the only, the big man that you all love, Big Daddy Liberty, is on the show, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. We've got quite an interesting discussion to talk about. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, I want you guys to know that Koketso Resane is part of Patriot, and the link is in the description. So if you want to go give them a subscribe, greatly appreciated. As well as Nolu Maki, who is on Twitter and is the voice of reason on Twitter. So please give her a follow. And of course, Big Daddy Liberty, I'm sure a lot of you know his YouTube channel, but in case you don't, his channel is also linked in the description below, as well as his Twitter handle that you can also give him a follow. And check out his new website, www.bigdaddyliberty.com, where you can get even more information on his social media and what he's up to. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. The topic tonight is, absent fathers, or the problem with absent fathers in South Africa. Let me first give a bit of context. Nolu was on my show not too long ago, and we touched on this subject very briefly, but we were talking about something else, so we didn't go too deep into the conversation. I said, hey, why don't you come back? We'll get like a panel and we'll talk about this, because it is quite a touchy subject for some people, but I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I think everybody on this panel comes from different backgrounds, as some of you may not have grown up with a father, some of you may have, and it'll be interesting to see the different opinions about this issue. And hopefully the idea here is that hopefully we can get people talking, and hopefully get people talking to the point where it leads to solutions rather than more problems. So Nolu, I'm going to let you begin and start us off. Maybe you can start from where you were talking about it on my show. One of the things that you mentioned is the cultural problems with, if I remember this correctly, men, that I remember one of the things you mentioned was it's almost kind of normal for, once they get a woman knocked up, for them to be excused from being fathers because they don't have money. I could be paraphrasing that very badly. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But please, take it away.
Oh, thank you for having me. And it's quite an honor to be part of a panel with Sihle, I must say. I just want to talk about as you said, I said to you that our society exonerates all the sins of men, especially when it comes to them taking care of their children. So much that without a father, men have become cowards. And they've given up so much, I would say, freedom to women. So much that women, I would say they're made to believe that they are the best when it comes to parenting, of which, from my experience, I know very well that that is not the case. There are men who, if they were not covered up, can become better parent when it compared to the woman. Not that I'm comparing the two, but I'm just saying that because of this, because dads aren't there, therefore our man, particularly a black man, they don't find it as they don't see the need to fight to be part of their children's lives, so much that it's easy for him to just run away. Yes, there are so many issues that entail that, but I just think that it has become a culture, it has become a norm, and that is why even when a woman is extremely a feminist, she would just want you literally just for you to give her a baby, and she knows that she is more than capable to take care of that baby simply because you've shown her that, and the fact that she has the money, of course. So it's the money issue, but most importantly, it's the fact that dads aren't there, and it's the norm for men to just be afraid.
All right. Koketso, do you care to comment on what Nolu said?
Yeah, I'm going to echo it entirely. It's got to do with that lack of social ostracism from society on men who abandon their families. This was simply unacceptable a few years ago. Simply put, you didn't need the judge in court to actually come out and tell you to be a father, let alone to pay babgeld. You didn't need that. Society itself would actually cast you aside, and men in society. Sorry about that. But yeah, my voice is going. But yeah, men in society would actually call you to order on what you were doing. But now it's perfectly normal. It's seen as acceptable. You don't get the ostracism that you used to. You can abandon your family as a man in today's age and carry on with life as is normal. And yeah, God forbid the woman doesn't actually take you to court. You're actually going to go ahead and even abandon one family and start another. You have men out there who have no business starting a family, and they don't get to pay the price for it, unfortunately. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the reasons why.
No, absolutely, we will. Sihle, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's a massive problem. Let's just begin there. And in saying that, it's important to ground oneself in the data, the numbers, right? I always say this on my show. Give me the data, data. I can't make bricks without clay. And when you look at the data in this country, especially from Stats SA, the numbers are actually just mind-boggling. We have a situation in this country where, in reality, only about 32.7% of children live with two parents in the household. The overwhelming majority of children, I'm talking about 67% plus, live with a single parent, and to which the overwhelming majority of that live with their mother only. About 42% live with their mom only. And again, just to give a sense of the numbers, because the numbers aggregate and break down in an even more terrible manner when you look at South Africa in particular. Of that 42, or rather, of the 67% or so of children who only live with a single parent in this country, 21%, that's nearly 1 in 5 South African children, actually grow up in a household where there's no parent whatsoever. And again, let me hit you with that again. 1 in 5 South African children grow up in a household where there's no parents whatsoever. Now, there being an absence of fathers is one thing, and that's disastrous in and of itself from a sociological perspective, from a psychological perspective. But in this country, we also face the distinct challenge of there being children who have no parents in the household. And again, I can go down the line insofar as the effects of there being no parents, or rather a single parent, and even at that, single moms in the household. I mean, the data is absolutely crystal clear on this, whether you're looking at OECD data, American data, or even South African data, the effects of which are basically this. And I could obviously go into detail, but I'll summarize it as this. A child born within a single parent household has a greater statistical chance of numerous things, from a diminished sense of self-concept, in a psychological sense, behavioral problems, truancy and poor academic results and performance, delinquency, and even youth crime. Take a visit to any South African, including max security prison, and ask the proportion of, if you could, of course, let's assume for a moment you had access to 100% of the prison population, and ask them what percentage of them grew up in a single parent household. Those numbers will tell a very telling tale of what happens when there's no father in the household. To which case, as a final thought, Koketso is hitting the nail on the head around the importance of having strong, solid, consistent, dependable, and providing male figures in the household. You remove them and watch a society unravel very quickly.
Absolutely. But how did we get here, guys? I mean, Is this also part of the incompetence of the ANC? Can we blame that? Is it a cultural issue? Is it a educational issue? Is it just different tribe situation? What led us here? Perhaps Sihle, enlighten us, because you travel quite a bit, and I've been lucky enough to join you on some of these travels across South Africa. I mean, you've been everywhere. What do you see? What's been your experience?
Okay, I'll need 45 solid seconds for this because there's a little bit of history that goes into it. There's current policy and, of course, the cultural element of it. Now, if you want to look at the family unit in this country, you actually have to go back to pre-colonial times and, of course, the introduction of the Union of South Africa and its laws in this country. So let me be precise. If you look at pre-colonial South Africa, most Bantu-speaking groupings in this country, whether they're Zulu, Xhosa formations, Swati, Tswana, etc., the notion of family, where there is a father in the household and a mother in the household, or even multiple mothers within a family unit, was very common. In fact, the exception, and the very rare exception, was children born out of some form of wedlock. That was a almost rare occurrence, and even in some cultural groupings, ostracized badly. I mean, it came with massive shame, including even being exiled from some clans. So again, I'm just charting this because it's important to underpin the fact that the norm amongst all Bantu-speaking groupings in this country, all tribal groupings in this country, was marriage and the family creation from that. So that when you then fast forward to around 1910, 1913, when the country had been formed, the Union of South Africa, and was under effectively a colonial, in a sense, still a colonial government, albeit it had independence in 1910, but it still had strong colonial vestiges. And in those, some of the pieces of legislation that were passed by those in government and governance at the time sought to effectively get two outcomes. Number one, strong, young, black, cheap labor into what was then the burgeoning Vaal and the industrial centers there, and of course the mining sector. And the best way you could do that was to find, those young black men in the quote-unquote reserves. That is, in the black areas where most Black South Africans lived a subsistence life. They farmed, and they created families. But how do you break those families up, and how do you entice people who are very happy living in a largely agrarian tribal life into these pretty crappy factory and mining jobs? Well, one of the ways you do that is through force. And remember, government is always force. So one of the first pieces of legislation you begin to see in this country that was aimed at removing the male and putting him in the mine and not in the family was a piece of legislation called the Hut and Pole tax. The Hut and Pole tax, basically, as the name suggested, charged a tax on agrarian Black South Africans per the land size and, of course, per hut, or it charged a pole in that sense, forcing those individuals who lived initially agrarian subsistence life to send young men to, guess where, the mines and the factories, to work there, to work simply to pay the tax that was imposed upon them by the colonial government. So that you have, if you were to chart the real beginnings of the breakup of the South African family, if you look at that piece of legislation and its consequent legislation and policy from them, you begin to see how fathers in particular were removed from the Black household, and this creation, if you will, of two families, one in the urban setting, historically in labor camps, feeding mines and feeding factories, and of course the family back home in a rural sense, to which from that colonial government, apartheid merely extended this practice and formalized it. And sadly, today's so-called Black government, this Black nationalist government, these commies and socialists in government, have never seen the imperative to repair that broken family unit, so that the myth that perpetuated itself that somehow Black people don't form families or don't form nuclear families, simply because the culture that was inscribed using force originally, government force, has perpetuated the situation we have today. So that's the history of, by and large, and really I was glossing over that just for the sake of time.
Yeah, no worries. But it's very informal. And I think it's put good context because I'm going to go back to Nolo with this one. Nolo, you mentioned at the beginning, there's this, now there's this culture of like women can take care of the kid. We don't need the men, but that's also a problem and the men are excused or whatever. Would you agree with what Sihle said in terms of the history that's kind of led us to this situation and maybe not accelerated, but kind of help drive that perception, if you will, in the culture of well, men aren't around, so the woman's going to do it, and the woman can maybe do it better, or doesn't need the men, or what have you.
I think when it comes to us, what I fought as Black people, we love to be hell bent to what broke us. This is not to say I'm disagreeing with Sihle. I'm with him 100%. It is history, it happened. But then I don't see us fighting for what is supposed to be. By that, the fact that it's not normal for you as a man not to be in the house, whereas you were there when you were making those kids. So what I fault us, because the rhetoric nowadays is that truly the colonizers they created this mess, so therefore we don't stand a chance to do better, of which I find it to be a lie. When you look at, for instance, the times of war, the war truly men were taken away from their families. Some had to die for that matter. But if you look at the West, they still honor what you call a solid family structure. But in our side, we still find it as an easy way to, I don't want to say it's an easy way to make it as a scapegoat, but I just find it that it's an excuse that we keep on using, and so much that we have incentivized it. And by incentivizing it, there's no change that we then see. So I fault us from not wanting to do better, despite the fact that truly we had these mishappenstances that happened to us, but that didn't mean we need to stay like that forever. So mine is that I just think that we can't continue picking back from what happened. We can look back, but if you can listen to podcasters of men, Black men, whenever they speak, they always want to go there, which is great, but then therefore they'll be like, that is why, who are we to even try and be at home? That is why, for that matter, even with this whole thing of polygamistic men in Zululand, which I respect, but then it is also creating another chaos, and most young men, they want to gravitate towards that, knowing very well that we're actually starting on zero with where our family structure is concerned. So we do it without structure, meaning without the polygamy structure, but we do it in a sense of one man sleep with this girl, make another baby, one man sleep with this girl, make another baby. So we are practicing it, but we're not really formalizing it. So that way, that is why you find that there is no change, and we are hell bent into this whole thing of agreeing with our nonsense. What is our nonsense? We don't want to change. Not all of us, but we just don't want to change. We don't want to be a nation that says, you know what, we were bad or we were done this, so therefore we just don't want to be like that no more. That's where I just fault us as a Black nation.
A very interesting point that you make there, and I'd really like to get Koketso's opinion on that as well. I mean, it's there has to be a way to kind of change that mentality. But before we get into that, Koketso, do you have anything you want to add to what Nolu just said?
Yeah, there's an elephant in the room here, and I'll be specific. The liberal attack on the institution that is marriage. Over time, we've just seen how marriage has basically been reduced from what effectively all of the major religions said it is, to just something like a contract. It's been reduced to a contract that you voluntarily get into and can easily get out of. What marriage used to do is it would hold the family together at the very least, and it would also hold you accountable not just to the marriage certificate and the state, but also to some of your religious leaders as well. Now, when you reduce marriage to just the contract, right, what you're in effect saying is that, like I mentioned, you can get into it voluntarily. But at the same time, that's also now created a culture where it's pretty much optional. You know, some time ago, it wasn't optional that you first get married and then you start a family. Now that marriage thing is actually optional. And that's, I think, caused really an increase in the number of fatherless homes, not just in South Africa, but the world over, really. Without the marriage, things like promiscuity, for instance, start to go on the rise. And then, yeah, we all know the effects of that. So it's something to be said, really, that, with the breakdown of marriage as the institution, then comes things like fatherlessness and also, reward for men that can walk away. I mean, all men have to do now is just make sure you pay papgeld, and that's about it. But when you once upon a time, when you were accountable to even your church elders, be it a church, mosque, synagogue, whatever, they would typically force you to man up, raise your family, fight for your family, and be a dad. Not just be a dad, be a husband as well. Be an upright figure in your society. All of that was tied to putting a ring on it, and that's now fallen away in the society that we live in.
Absolutely, I think you bring up a very valid point with that point about society and the way it's shifted its mentality to basically degrade the institution of marriage. And I think something else I wanted to quickly mention as well, because someone did comment, and I think it's another aspect to this problem in South Africa, is the social grant system. Women are paid basically to have kids in a way, because if they have a kid, they get a social grant. They have more kids, they get social grants for each kid that they have. At the moment, I think I can't remember which organization at the moment is calling for it, but there's an organization out there that is basically saying no, there needs to be a cap on these grants that are given to people who keep on having kids. And Sihle, I know this is something that's going to be...
Yeah, but it's important to just to clarify that.
Yeah.
Because women aren't having the babies in order to have the social grant. The data is actually very murky on that. There's no data for that. What you're actually seeing instead is the notion of incentives, right? Incentives in the sense of there is rather an incentive for men to not necessarily look after their babies, because women are choosing to effectively marry the government and not the father of the child. So if you effectively, so it's a perverse incentive. So if you are literally saying, well, hey, if you have a baby with Utabo or Musa or Sihle or whatever the case, and Sihle simply is not around, well, it's okay, because on the one hand, the state is there and you'll have to go through a whole lengthy process, but you effectively, because of that process, are tied to me as the state. The conditions around which you access this particular grant are contingent on you acting a certain way for me, daddy government, so to speak. And therefore, why as a male would you bother effectively if there's no social pressure being placed on you? Heck, if there's no legislative pressure, if you will, placed on you to play your fatherly role, not that there should be. I mean, intrinsically, playing a fatherly role should be something which, because of family planning, getting married, as Koketso said, social institutions around you, the family, the church, the synagogue, the shul, the mosque, etc. I can go down the line. It should be social institutions which are the ones that are creating norms, creating values, creating customs, that are geared, towards family creation and the reproduction of families in communities. But we don't have that. I mean, what we've placed in that place, and again, I'm not blaming the people who are having kids. And I'm not blaming the people who are effectively live in the circumstance, because it's very easy for us to apportion blame on the other person. Oh, it's those people who are having the babies outside of wedlock. But in reality, it's also our responsibility as individuals who live in the society to push out the sort of values, customs, and practices that we find socially acceptable. We should bring back, for example, that sense of social pressure that we used to have back, your uncles or your grandfather or your dad would be the one that says, hey man, you've just slept with this young woman, there's a baby on the way, hashtag shotgun marriage. There used to be days where literally, as the suggestion goes, you'd be held by the scruff and drag down the aisle. Hey man, you got to marry this woman and you got to build a sense of family for that. We've totally eliminated that in this new age belief that somehow marrying the government is beneficial. And of course, marrying the government comes with the ideology of the politicians today. They have an incentive to do this because it creates that further dependency that politicians yearn for, which is why I began my input, at least, by saying always track, the history of something, the culture it then creates, an artificial culture, by the way, which is why I agree with the Nolu. What we accept today is this culture of, oh, well, um, uh, sisters are doing it for themselves, or moms can do it, can go it alone. It's absolute hogwash. It's absolute hogwash. It goes against what effectively, what and who we have been historically, which is households with two parents in it, well, a minimum of two, since a man can take, in certain customs, numerous wives, but it's wives, not girlfriends, wives. Each of those wives that man was responsible for to be the following: a protector, a provider, and of course, a transmitter of faith, customs, and values. That was the traditional man. That is effectively the man who got married, created these families. I'm going to hit you with that again. It was a protector, a provider, and a transmitter of faith, values, and customs. It's that man today who we essentially are disincentivizing the creation of in two ways. One, by having this daddy government, I said, who is a fallback, who pays the cost, if you will, of bad behavior by a man who has a child out of wedlock and doesn't want to take after it. So that's the one side of it. And two, it is the effects, if you will, of a highly feminized environment for numerous reasons. For numerous reasons. And again, I don't know how much time we have here, because this in and of itself is an important issue. We often hear people say a lot about, oh, South Africa, they say, is characterized by toxic masculinity. The masculinity is the problem, we're often told. And then when you look at the reality, you say, well, hang on, let's take that claim and weigh it up against the reality. What masculine influences do the overwhelming majority of men actually have from birth to effectively manhood, right? So 18 or 21, however you want to aggregate that. And the truth of the matter is very little. From the household, it's mostly, as I showed you in the data, single moms who are raising kids, if not no parents rather. It's either no parents or a single mom, which is statistically the average of who raises kids. Those single moms, because of the broader issues around the removal of men from the households, often means extended families are also extended families of aunts and gogos and etc. etc. There's very little in the way of male influence in that environment. Again, go further. The child exits the home, goes to school. What do you think the breakdown of gender is of teachers in this country? There is more likelihood of a child encountering a female teacher in the school than a male teacher. Again, it continues. Female energy is effectively what we're raising young men in, to the point where by the time they reach so-called manhood, the influences of masculinity in their lives are actually very minimal. So that what you're actually really seeing is a highly feminized man who's then expected to hold a masculine frame that he's never been taught. Riddle me that.
Yeah, a very good point. Perhaps, Koketso, maybe you want to comment on that, on the feminism of man that Sihle is talking about.
Well, there's two sides to this coin, right? There's the global view, and then there's the South African view. The uniquely South African view kind of went a bit offside with the whole "men are trash" movement. Which quickly then evolved into all forms of masculinity are effectively bad. They start off by saying toxic masculinity, and then when you ask what exactly is toxic masculinity, no one can give you a straight answer. And so it's quickly interpreted as anything that is inherently masculine is therefore toxic. Anything that is inherently masculine is somehow oppressive and very patriarchal, etc. Funny thing though, if you talk to a lot of women, right, they actually want a manly man, if I can put it like that. Women don't want another woman in the house. They want a
Right.
father for their child. They want a husband, not a wife. And so, if this society that we're in, that heavily feminizes men, like Sihle mentioned, that actually it's basically reducing the number of fish in the pond, and those who are still in the pond as men, I guess, are the real winners here. But yeah, that's what it comes down to. And the femininity, the feminists really have become, I would say, toxic themselves, in that when a woman does express the yearning or they want for a manly man, they go after they go after that woman in response. But to me, it just tells me that, take away all of the ideological nonsense, take away all of the unicorn fairy utopia stuff. At the end of the day, a man would a man who's interested in women wants a feminine woman, and a woman who's interested in men wants a masculine man. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how we have progressed as a species. That's how it has always been. But like I mentioned earlier, the liberal progressive attack on the institute of marriage actually goes even further than marriage, and it goes right down to the masculinity of men, and seemingly nowadays even the femininity of women. There's a reason they're trying to make every child trans. Why can't a boy be a boy and a girl be a girl? Why must a girl somehow transition into being a boy and a boy transition into being a girl? They're trying to break down not just the masculinity, but even the femininity of men, of women, who men find very attractive, including me.
And me. Yeah. So look, I'm definitely gonna say that this is a multi-layered issue. I mean, Koketsu, the points you bring up right now are very valid points. Same with Sihle and Nolu. Nolu, I want you to quickly comment as well. I think from a woman's point of view, which is something we kind of talked about in our previous conversation, this idea that women do want a man in the household. Again, not all, but most would like to have a man in the household. The opening of doors, a gentleman, and stuff like that. What's your opinion on what Koketsu has just said?
Well, there's two things. And number one, when a woman doesn't want the man simply because she has some form of income, convey that woman doesn't want that man in the house. And a lot of women, especially when they've got an income, they aren't necessarily interested in a man being part of her life, meaning I don't even want to get to the part of marriage, but they don't even want to share life intimately with that man. And I don't mean it any way that is sexual or anything like that. I just mean that in doing life with that man. That woman, she's not lying, she doesn't want that. As they've said, and then I've said before, simply because when a woman or a girl child does not know a presence of a dad, it's difficult for her to embrace the presence of a man, especially when that man has to be, I would say, to take on, supposedly, I guess, the shoes of the father, meaning him being the one who takes care of her, who protects her, who provides for her, and truly, and then for her to trust that, you know what, this man means good for me. It's a difficult thing for us as women nowadays. I know this from my friends because most of them they've never had a dad. And for me, as someone who's had a dad who's quite present, I've always been seen as weak because I love the male energy. I love it. I love it even in small things, whether I'm in a taxi, whatever. I just love the fact that I can ask a male to help me when I can't do something. One, also, you might find a group of men who might say that, no, why must I do that for you? So there are men who's also actually fighting when a woman wants them to play that role. And then they would be like, no, you guys must say it's 50-50. So they sort of put that blanket statement saying that all women don't want a man in their lives. It's just like men, or rather, women would say that all men, or all women, or I don't know, I'm confused what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to drive here is the fact that we put blanket statements on things that are not necessarily true. So that's number one. And then number two, I want to add this part that my concern is this: we are the ones who've created this mess for us as this generation. What is this mess? We are the ones who want a contract that is open. Let's have sex, let's have kids. Okay, we've said we wanted. But why aren't we then in that contract actually honoring that contract? Whether it was a verbal contract, whatever it might be. My issue, Joe, tonight, there's men here. Why are men easily running away from that contract? Because I kid you not, most of the time, even if they are 16 and 17, 18 or 17 kids, they agree whenever they want to make a baby. So why is it easy for a man to just run out from that contract? That's you can say it's all these things we've listed, but the fact is that you said it. We agreed. Take for instance, I agreed with Koketso. This is what you're going to do. I'm expecting him to hold his own as well and saying, no, remember, Noltando, even if I'm crazy with my feminism, we agreed. You said we're going to do this, and this is what happened. Therefore, we need to stomach it. When a man can say that to a woman, not all of them I know, but a woman will be like, okay, wow, he wants to be a hero. Let me try it. My concern is that men just want to be like, okay, okay, do you? That's my question to the man.
All right, Koketso, before you jump in, and I can see Koketso, Sihle want to jump in, but I'm gonna just speak from my point of view, okay, and then you guys can add anything that I may have missed or correct me if I'm wrong. To answer your question, no, from a man's perspective, okay, I was grown up luckily with both parents. My father later on in my years, from the age of 16, wasn't very present because of his work. He had to travel a lot and wasn't very much around. But luckily, I was raised by wonderful parents who instilled in me values, Christian values, family-oriented values. So I avoided having a kid until now. I'm 33 years old this month. I've avoided having a kid until now. And when I decided to have a kid, I took it very seriously with my wife. We discussed it and we said, let's try, and we were married by this point. So I'm one of, I don't know if you can call it lucky or whatever. I'm just one of these men that happen to have gotten a good upbringing, had the privilege and honor of being raised by two wonderful parents that instilled in me these values. Now, I'm going to say that some of it, not all of it, I think for some people that are growing up in South Africa, because they don't have that family unit, and not all of them are like this, because I see someone in the comments saying that their father wasn't around very much, but they grew up fine, and that's absolutely great. I praise your mom; she must have been amazing. For the most part, when a man is not around, it does lead to social issues such as crime. They can get easier, they can fall into crime easily, drugs. There's a lot of issues that can come in with it, and unfortunately, some of these men don't have a sense of responsibility or accountability. They weren't raised with those characteristics, if you can put it that way. And ergo, even if they decide with a woman to just even have sex, in my opinion, if you have sex with a woman and you're not taking precautionary measures to not have a kid, then you are effectively deciding to have a kid. Okay, no one's pull-out game is that strong. Let's just be honest about it. Okay, if you are consciously having unprotected sex, you are agreeing to the consequences that might happen after that. And unfortunately, in our society, like we mentioned earlier, it's kind of like, it's okay, and people say, I was drunk, or I was this, or there was drugs, blah, 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 I didn't mean to. And then the family values and the people that used to say, you knocked her up, you need to now, that's the thing. Some of these men are growing up without that father figure, whether it's their real father or an uncle or whatever, saying, hey, buddy, you messed up here. You got to take responsibility. You got to raise that kid. It's your kid. There's no one there to say it, so they can run away and stuff like that. I'm paraphrasing my thoughts very heavily because I really want Koketso and Sihle to add to what I've said. But that's, in a nutshell, my answer.
Can I interject, please? I want to clarify something.
Okay.
The two gentlemen here, they know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I get that you might be coming from a different culture's perspective. Joe, both of us, men and women, say for instance, me and Koketso, I'm going to keep making an example of because me and him are the same age. Me and Koketso go to the same varsity. I don't have a dad. He doesn't have a dad, right?
Sorry.
We were idiots, both of us. And we said, you know what, Dali, we feel this thing. Let's do it. Right? We agreed. No matter what we agreed upon, even if we were highly sexualized, whatever the thing may be, but we agreed. Now, my mother at home will expect me to hold the fort. He
Okay.
will be excused, even by his own mother. Dare he says that, you know what, no, you know what, I wasn't ready. No, I told her, in my language,
I
yeah,
don't
and
sound
then
like that. I'm just saying.
I
and
thought
then
it
he's
was a
gonna
pretty
pull
good
the blame
impression.
on me, right? But his mom will be like, are you silly? She's from this family and that. Maybe his, because moms, they tend to favor the boys. Period. You know? And then I'm left in this cold place, drop out of school. He continues, goes on and goes, buys a polo or a golf, GTI, gets more girls, and then I'm still left in the dark because typically they buy GTI. I'm still left in the dark. And still he has the audacity to continue, not even to think about that baby. That I could never comprehend in my mind how, as a man, you'd even sip a bottle of beer knowing you've left someone with the child whilst you agreed. When we were feeling this thing. And even if you don't want me now, my question is this: can you both reason and sit down and say, listen, this child doesn't deserve us being bitter with each other? Can we raise this child? We might not stay together, but can we parent this kid? That's where my point is.
Oh, Koketso, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, you see now. Yeah, look, there's quite a bit. Yeah, so this touches with my earlier point about, when I mentioned that there's men out there who become dads, but they had no business in the first place making offspring, and that's because they simply lack the responsibility. So, fine, you could end up being a father, not planned, of course, but in the event that that happens, you still need the requisite maturity to decide, you know what, let me man up, let me actually do what needs to be done. If I'm unemployed, let me go get a job. If I'm employed and I've got some form of financial means, you know what, let me actually let's do this family thing. That requires maturity, and a lot of men have no business playing with that fire if they don't have the right tools to play with that fire. That's the first thing. Second thing, as to how we ended up getting up here, look, it's what happens when a problem compounds. So there's a domino effect here that comes from the fact that all of this is a result of a lack of reprimand, which would typically come from senior men, men older than you. Now, if you are a deadbeat dad who then ends up being a man in their 50s, how exactly are you going to reprimand your nephews if you yourself never really lived the example you want them to be? You're not in a position to do that, sadly, unfortunately. So how are you going to do that? So you're actually not in a position to reprimand those that come after you to not do what you did. The best you can do really is give them advice, but that's not really reprimand. That's advice which can be ignored outright. That's the domino effect. Now, if you're growing up without that father figure, I don't want to say a father, but without a father figure who has done things right, you are going to find yourself potentially in a situation where there's no one out there who can reprimand you in a manner that you will actually take to heart. There's no one to drag you to the altar where you have to, now, there's no one to drag you to the chapel where you have to now wait for this woman to walk down the aisle so you can start a family. There's no one to actually, for lack of a better term, kick your ass into being a dad for the kids. Not necessarily a husband to the woman, but at the least you could do is be a father. There's no one to reprimand you into doing that. And that's because a lot of the men who would have assumed that role, they themselves have done the same mistake and have had to live with it for years to go. That's the domino effect. How do you break all of this? Well, you go away from being comfortable about it. Take away the comfort of being a guy with 3 girlfriends and 12 kids. Take that away. Denormalize that. Don't make it a thing. uh, Basically go back 50 years and live that sort of a life where you had to own up. And I don't want to say own up to a mistake, because again, children are not a mistake, at least in my religious uh, God-fearing view. Man up about it. Be a man about it and be that parent, even if you didn't have one to begin with. And a lot of men do go ahead and actually do that out of not wanting to put their children through something or similar experience that they would have had to go through themselves. That's how you break it. But much of this messaging isn't being delivered to those who need to hear it. A lot of this is being preached to the choir, and that's unfortunate, unfortunately.
Well, I think you nailed it on the head. But Sihle, I'm going to come to you. Do you have anything else to add, and especially to Nolo's question about men in this country?
Yeah, look, there's three nested features in this conversation which are important. Number one, understanding the history, as I said, super important, because it then allows us as men of this generation, even as those men of this generation who didn't have older men to model ourselves along to, insofar as fathers, right? Biological fathers. But we did have older men to model ourselves to who were extended. Because those men do exist, right? Like, one wasn't speaking in absolute terms, like, oh, there are no male role models. No, 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 of course they are. The issue becomes it's a phased thing, right? Young men are best socialized through, sorry, I thought of this sentence in Zulu, so I'm quickly translating in my head. Young men are best socialized through what they see and not what they're told, right? Men communicate through deeds, which is why men learn best when we're in teams. In fact, we gravitate towards doing things that prompt a dopamine response that are team-based. That's how in school, what do? We play the cricket, the rugby, the soccer. All of these are team-based activities which teach broader social values, customs, and norms, right? And often it's in those spaces where I think we need to take two steps back as this current generation. Number one, what is a man? What is a man? If I was Matt Walsh, I'd be asking you, what is a woman? But thankfully, everybody on this panel can answer that question. But what is a man, right? And there's to the best of me, you'll have to forgive me. There's a lot I can say about this, but I'll be very, very concise. We need to go back to first defining and being comfortable as men of this generation in defining who we are as men, not listening to various political vested interest groupings and social groupings who are trying to pervert the meaning of things. The modern left and the woke left and the gender activists who want to pervert the meaning of words so that they can actually change them. But what is a man, right? To be a man. And generally speaking, being a man is three things. You can aggregate it in three ways. One, you get the sort of the roguish man, the rugged man, and the refined man. Now, one day I'll go into those details as to what each of those are and how each of the type of man, if you will, is socialized in a society in order to then culminate to the point where they become a husband. And how other older men, recognize who you are, of those three types of men, rugged, roguish, and refined, recognize who you are and shape you, right? Shape you in becoming really what we really want to see. And I'm speaking in sort of final terms here because I don't know how much long we have on the show, but the final terms for me is this. We need to go back to incentivizing, creating, teaching, modeling confident, intelligent, and assertive men. Those men who are able to take leadership roles of leadership of the self, leadership in the family unit, leadership of communities, and of course, at a broader level in a broader society. Let me hit you with that again. Confident, intelligent, assertive men. It is that CIA type of man, if you will, who makes no mistake around what kind of woman they want in their life, how they treat that woman, and the importance of that woman in their life. And often what that man looks for is, well, if he's a CIA, he looks for an FBI, which is a feminine, beautiful, and inspirational woman. Someone who he recognizes that this life thing is best done with the two of us. This life thing is best done in about two. Why? Because for most of us here, Nolu mentioned age. I'm not that old. But for most of us here, we are living effectively what is the second half of our lives, right? We're young adults, and this is the second half of life where we've transitioned from being children under the tutelage of someone to being young adults, finding our way as men, whether you're roguish, rugged, or refined, and now becoming the sort of men who we are looking for a partner if we understand that this life thing is best done. It's about two, where there's two of us, where you get married in a marriage, have children In that marriage, build a life of two incomes, primarily with hopefully you as a man being in a position to be a provider. But if not, also that's fine as a two income household. Why? Because a two income household offers better opportunities for the children which you raise, right? That's the focus. That's the simplicity of it all. But we live in a time where there are, as I said, these vested interest groups, these leftist woke, gender bending interest groups who have no incentive in seeing that traditional family. As I hear a helicopter like literally hover over my home, maybe it's the lefties, like SEAL Team 6 coming to take me out for speaking this truth. But you literally have a situation where, let's begin here. Let's first, as men, heal what has been broken, and that's literally breaking it into what is a man, who are you, how can I as a man in your network support you to be that confident, intelligent, assertive man. Once you're that chap, go after your goals. Focus on your goals first. Build yourself, build your income, build your ability to be a provider, right? Once you're that provider, then find that partner, that FBI, if you will, that feminine, beautiful, inspirational woman to then be a protector of, right? Remember I said protector, provider? And then once you're a protector of her, marry her. Actually recognize that the institution of marriage is a system of protecting you, right? Once you've married her, then create the children, because at that point you can be that man in the household of being, if I said you're a protector, a provider, and once the kids are there, a transmitter of faith, values, and customs. Those are the packages. That's the set of a whole of society picture that I would like to see. This is where people often call me, the conservative, if you will. Yes, by Hashem, I will own that label. I am a conservative because that is exactly what I want to see. A healthy society where we're creating families and the children in our society are protected. Versus what we're seeing now with the sort of the woke progressive, the gender activist types who advocate for this broken, fragmented society, where I often ask people, never judge the lefty on the intentions. The intentions are always, we believe if we do things this way, we allow people to do this and do that, then it'll allow for this kind of a world that it is now, right? They're always defeated by a kind of a world that it is now. And in this world of a kind that it is now, men are not taking up the leadership responsibility as individuals in the family. Women essentially are feeling despondent because they look around them and the men are not looking to enter into that contract, that solemn contract of, if we're in a relationship, it's geared towards something long term. We do this life thing, it's about two, as I always say. They're not seeing that. And equally, we're not creating the families which are creating a new generation raised in a stable environment. So we're generating a new generation, if you will, of South Africans who are able to take on the world. So we're not doing that because lefties basically saying, well, it's okay that we don't do this. And I'm saying no. It's about time that we actually accept and actually fight for and be bold in fighting for, as conservative South Africans, as that God-fearing, law-abiding, and family-oriented South Africa that actually can build this nation and indeed build this economy.
Wow, Sihle, passionate, and this is why I love having you on the show, and I love watching your show. Always said to the point and perfectly as well. I couldn't agree more. And just to answer the question of time, if you guys are okay, we'll end at 9:30. But if one of you do have to go beforehand, that's absolutely fine. I understand, because I feel like there's still a bit more that we can get through here. And I think Sihle brings up a very good point, but I'm gonna play a bit of devil's advocate a bit here, and at the risk of perhaps being canceled, because I don't want to sound like as the left would say, a victim blamer, or whatever what's that term, victim blaming or whatever you have it, but Sihle brings up some good points about the kind of men that women should. Or the kind of men that men should strive to be, the kind of culture that we need to implement, the values that we need to implement, and all that stuff. That's all good and well. But Nolu, I'll let you answer this one. Do you maybe think that some of it has to do with the women, in a sense? Women may be getting in bed with men too soon. They may not take the time to get to know a man. If this is a man because the men like Sihle just described do exist, right? There's 3 of them right now on this channel. They do exist, right? So I don't mean to blame the woman, but maybe, I'm not trying to, but maybe women also need to take a step back and be like, am I ready to even have that step of intimacy with a man? And is he the kind of man that won't run away?
Sure. True. I have a role that I need to play whenever I meet with the kind of Koketso, not the Koketso of this, but that example I was making. And that goes with the teaching. Now, whenever it comes with relationships and women tend to be more rebellious in terms of exploring. Sometimes men, especially in that age that I mentioned, varsity age and whatever, some might not necessarily be looking in being with a woman or sleeping with a woman. But sometimes women, they tend to be the ones who initiate such things, because I know us, I know how we tend to be at times. And we do so very gullibly in so much that we then forget that within our steps there are consequences, and then we then find ourselves in a space where we can't necessarily what can I say? We can't refine the sort of men that we want, because you are also in that adolescent stage, if I could use that word. But then now, fast forward to when you are now a woman, meaning now you are working and doing all of what you are doing. Like I said before, if I have never seen someone taking care of me, meaning if I've never had the man role in my life, therefore, I'm not going to say I'm bound or prone to actually go to that bad guy, but I'm saying that is why, for me, I knew that I needed to be in a space like a church to be taught what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a woman that has value, that has substance? And a woman that will love being a feminine woman, right? And a woman will also not fight against her natural instincts. What are those? The fact that I want to make a house a home, the fact that I need to spend so much time in that kitchen, the fact that I need to be caring, loving, and the fact that I need to make sacrifices if I might find myself being a mother. So therefore, and the fact that, which is very important, the reason why women do not want to be in these relationships with the men that Rosita just explained is because a woman would say nowadays that, listen, do you, because when you sacrifice and being under the leadership of the man that Rosita explained, then you might find yourself being, what's this thing? You might fall behind of life. Because remember one thing, as a woman, it's not as the same compared to a man when it comes to you gathering wealth. It will never be the same. The minute that I become pregnant or I do certain things, my body changes, I will forfeit certain interest. And that is, of course, to chase after wealth. Even now, as we speak in our society, there's a whole lot of drive of women needing to make a lot of money. The very same women, I know them, they crash and bang because you know what? And they do that despite the fact that they are married, right? Because they need to grab the bag, they need to have as much money as they can be, so much that you see them being married, but they are still competing together with the husband. And then it's very rare for a woman nowadays to allow the man to take the shining spot, meaning to be the one that is really getting all the time to gather as much wealth or to gather as much produce for the household. That doesn't mean the woman cannot go out there and produce. Yes, it is important, but I mean in the sense of her strength, everything will never be the same as the man's strength. So my point is this, Joe. Yes, it's our responsibility to look for that man. If we have never had that man in our household, we need to empower ourselves, and that empowerment doesn't come from Beyonce, doesn't come from all other people that I love Beyonce, sorry, and who actually taught us garbage, but nowadays they are married because she hasn't divorced with a billionaire, but still I might find myself not being interested to getting married. So in that way, I owe it to myself to unlearn certain things and to really want to be that better woman. Because remember, I might get that man who Sita just described, but I might not be interested in doing life with him. But he might marry me. And he will marry me, by the way. But I might fight the way that he wants us to live. And a lot of them, they're going through that. So yeah.
No, that's a very fair point as well, and again, this is why I say this issue is very multi-layered. I mean, there's external factors, there's internal factors, there's parental factors, there's government factors in it, and I want to try and bring us back to, the title itself. If we said absent fathers, or the problem with absent fathers in South Africa, let's try and maybe come up with some. We kind of already touched a bit, Sihle, especially with the kind of men that we should strive to be as men. But are there other solutions? Are there other maybe ways that we can try and change this mentality or behavior or culture, whatever you want to call it, in South Africa specifically? Do we try and have seminars and speak to men that have kids that are not present? Do we try and encourage people to drag them to the altar? Personally, I don't necessarily think that if you're married out of wedlock, you should be dragged to the altar. I've seen many cases where people do get married because they're forced to get married because they have a kid, and then the marriage ends in shambles, and then the kid doesn't have any parent because they're being pawned against each other and stuff like that. And the kid gets in the middle and it's very ugly, and they can't co-parent, which is a situation nobody wants. So, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. What is the solution? Koketso, maybe you can shed some light a little bit, and then I'll go to Sihle. Are there any ideas that you may have, even if it's something as simple as men just talking to each other when they get together for beer? What do you think could be a solution?
Well, I suppose that would be a start. Those of those of us men who have some semblance of positive influence. The onus really is on us to spread it. It's a very similar argument made for even things like GBV, where you've got men coming out and saying, right, we are going to start a new movement. We are going to call it Not in My Name, as a means of saying, men, let's reach out to other men. But perhaps a more broader solution would be, I don't want to sound, I don't want to come across the wrong way, but perhaps let's go back maybe a little bit to some of the old ways. Right now, this could be a result of things like corporal punishment having been outlawed, for instance. Now, I'm not saying bring corporal punishment back, but I'm just saying that there seems to be a lack of consequence for boys. I'm not even getting to men yet. There's a lack of consequence for boys who step out of line as they're growing up as 13, 14, 15, 16 year olds. And then they become young adults who their line of wrong from right has actually had the line blurred. They then become likely to commit crime before we've even looked at whether there is a father figure or a dad in the home or not. So that's where we are as society. And then you pull the father out of the home, and statistically the odds now go well into the realm of, right, you are exponentially likelier to commit crime, to rape women, because, like it or not having a father figure does cause low self-esteem, and that in turn is what can then cause you to end up at first opportunity of a girl letting you into the fourth base at first opportunity. Because you had the low self-esteem, you're now going to be a dad. That low self-esteem is what actually creates that mental, I don't know what it's called, maybe Sihle can help me out here, but creates the mental conditions for even a man to justify why raping a woman is okay. you know this does other things as well. Not having a father or father figure also results in a lack of ambition. That means you will, as a man, not be the best version of yourself you can be, and there's several effects to that. That means economically you will not ever go anywhere near your potential, because you simply lack the ambition. You will not be a good employee, let alone an employer. You won't take home as much money as you should be. You won't You won't speak better. You won't dress better. And society as a whole suffers because of that. A lack of low self-esteem also fosters weak men, and weak men, people say masculinity is bad, but wait until there's a lack of masculinity in society. A lack of masculinity or weak men are not the men who protect those around them, not just women and children, but even other men, for instance. Weak men are those who don't have good values, good morals, religious or otherwise. You know, Weak men are a result of typically low self-esteem, which again can easily be caused by a lack of a father. So a solution, I guess, would be those of us here now in this panel, listening to this both right now live or even after the fact. The simplest thing you can do is not be that man. Don't be that guy who abandons your family. Don't be that guy who knocks up a girl. Don't be that guy who literally has to be dragged to court for you to show face for your children either. Just don't be that guy. That's the very least we can do. And perhaps we can turn the tide. And if that's the solution, I understand it will take at least a generation to reverse the trend. But it's the very least you can do. It doesn't require money. It doesn't require you to formally join an organization. It doesn't even require you to go and picket in the street and protest, etc. The least you can do is be literally the model, exemplar, ideal of a good husband, a good father. And to do that, you first have to be a good boyfriend. And to do that, you first have to be a good guy. And to do that, you have to basically put in the work and make a conscious effort to do that. That's the least you can do. And yeah, you will not receive a prize for it, but I'm pretty sure you will live a life that, that is worth reliving if it ever comes down to that.
Fantastic. Sihle, anything to add to what Koketso said?
Well, okay, not so much to what Koketso said, but just as a final point to make, a must dash in the next 5 minutes. This would be my final thought. If we want to reclaim this country and reclaim it from the very people who see no value in family creation, see no value in stable communities, see no value in creating a new generation of South Africans who are capable, invested in the country, and indeed, healthy in a physical sense, in an emotional sense, in a financial sense, you name it. If South Africa is to endure, and indeed not just endure, but actually prosper, then we need to be, as I said, unashamed as the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South Africans in saying, this is who we are, damn it. We are family orientated, we're God-fearing, and by and large, we're law-abiding people, unless, of course, the traffic light is turned orange and you want to beat it. Suddenly all vestiges of law are out the window. But we need to be unafraid, unashamed as the 4F type South Africans and saying, actually, it's okay, my brother. It's okay to reach out to the chap next to you, your homie, a male, a colleague, whatever, and say, brother, lean on me, bring your issues to me, let's talk about it. Let's create a men's circle where we can chat about what it is to be a man. What kind of man are you? What kind of father are you? What are you dealing with? What are you struggling with? It's okay for us to talk about these things and be unashamed in providing and putting forward solutions and interventions which are grounded in masculinity, grounded in making sure that the man next to you is that confident, intelligent, assertive man that you're arguing, that I'm arguing at least men should be. Same thing with the sisters. Y'all need to be in a situation where, especially the married sisters, be some of the loudest advocates and say, hey man, once you exit that danger zone, which for me is the age of 26, between the age of 26 and 35 for women, once you exit the danger zone and you're north of 35 and you're in no man's land, life is very difficult. So if anything, whilst you're young or once you enter that danger zone, focus like a laser. focus as a dear young lady in finding the kind and caliber of man that you know you can do this life thing with and live out a second half of your life in a much more prosperous, union-based type arrangement. These are the sort of conversations, especially us, this generation, we should be encouraging each other to do and the like. To say actually we're better off actually forming strong unions. How about we elevate this friendship network into becoming more than just friends who are single, we met at varsity or we grew up together, but into being married couple friends. Like, this is my wife, that is your husband. We go camping together and blah, 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 you name it. But basically build a network is what I'm trying to say here in a rather arduous way that is grounded in confident, intelligent, and assertive men, feminine, beautiful, and inspirational women who form these unions, who create these marriages, and who do this life thing together. For me, that is how you begin to beat those terrible statistics of fatherlessness in the household. That is how you end this culture that feminism latches onto of fooling, on the one hand, single women into thinking that either A, it's preferable, or B, okay to be a single mom. Forgetting, of course, that often unsaid part of that equation of just how difficult it is for a single woman to try and raise a child in this country. Ask any single parent. Ask my mom if she's still alive. My mother was a single parent who was physically disabled. Life for her was a compounded level of difficulty, where, it has effects on the children, it has effects on her as a single parent. So these are not ideals. And I think it's up to us as South Africans, the more conservative leaning South Africans. And I'm using this word conservative just to have a word for it. Really, it goes beyond whether you're conservative or whatever the case may be. But actually building a South Africa that is rooted in, as I said, and I always say on my show, faith, the love of flag, the notion that, of course, we're one country, family as an important foundation, and of course, freedom.
Thanks, Sihle. All right, so I think we're pretty much almost done with the show. So, Nolu, I want to come to you from a woman's perspective, and then after Nolu, we'll quickly go to signing off. So I'll give you guys each a moment to just tell people where to find you and stuff like that. And Sihle, if you're still around, I'd like to promote your new show. But if you have to go now, I understand. Nolu. From your point of view as a woman, I'd really like to hear what do you think is a solution to the problem of absent fathers?
I think it starts with a woman not thinking that I will really say this again, when she has money, then there's no need for a man. Listen, there's something Jordan Peterson said, that when a woman wants to actually be in poverty, then she needs to find herself being a single parent or a single mother. A lot of what is said now, it really makes women believe that she can raise a child alone. That is one part. Number two, I just want men to really understand how important are they. Without my dad, I wouldn't be the woman that I am today. My dad was a plumber and he worked in construction, but I don't remember a day lacking. I was the most taken care child ever. There's so many things my dad have done and still does for me. In fact, I actually realized later that my father was really working an ordinary job. All these years, I thought my dad was really a man who had a very affluent profession. What am I trying to say about that? I'd say that is a gift of a man. He is really, when he's committed and takes care of his own, I believe God truly blesses his hand and children become fulfilled on the inside. And I think that there's also a growing a man who want to do or raise kids on their own, which I don't like, because I still believe that just because you are there present as a dad, it doesn't mean that you need to remove the place of a man. Women are falling apart or falling away being women simply because there's a lot of nonsense that is out there. And my thing is this: women need to go back and being women and loving being woman. And in that way, I think we can all do the work inside, and our societies can become better. But I just want to really stress the point that men are very important, dads are very important, just as moms are very important. And I want to also stress this part: my guy, if she doesn't want to do life with you, do not get her pregnant. And if she's hell bent in doing life on her own, my guy, please leave that sister alone. Also, if she wants to chase the bag, I'm telling you, I don't care what you can convince her. I don't care even if you may be a billionaire, she will not listen to you. And when we chase the bag as women, it'll be easy for me to also sleep with another man. So our morals go out of the window because I want that bag. Whereas when a guy is chasing a bag, there might be slim chances for him to even give up his body. But for me, because I'm a woman, I might find myself giving up my body. So if she's chasing those things, leave her alone. She will not change. Remember, it was Eve who did what she did. So, my guy, you are not God. Just make sure that you do not try and change a woman. It's difficult. Remember, I can convince Sihle to have the best style when it comes to clothes because it's in my nature to make him look good. It's difficult for him to convince me, on the other hand, to be something different because it's not that way. You get what I'm saying? The influence is more. You know that as well. They know, all of you know, when a man meets a girl, that guy will change like that. No longer wants to chill with you now because, he found a girl. That's how we are. Our influence can be toxic and it can be very good at the same time.
Well said, absolutely. And that's why there's an old saying, behind every great man is a woman. So there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, as we close off, I'm just going to give each panelists a chance to just mention where people can follow them if you want to know more about them. I'm going to start with Sihle because I know he has to go. Sihle, you have a brand new show. It started, I think you're in the second week now. It's called, I'm going to let you describe it. You can just briefly tell us what this new show is all about. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can get Sihle on his Twitter handle linked in the description below, as well as his YouTube channel linked in the description below. Sihle, tell us about your new project.
Yeah. All right, you can now catch me weekdays from 7 a.m. on my new morning and news analysis show called Vuga Nazo. That's weekdays, of course, from 7 a.m. Vuga Nazo. And of course, you can find me now on my website, newly minted website at www.bigdaddyliberty.com.
There you go. Sihle, thank you so much for joining us and all your inputs. Always great having you on the show. We'll have you back again, I'm sure, very soon. So thanks again, Sihle. So now we're left with two. Koketso, tell us, where can we find you next? And again, links in the description, man Patriot. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow him on Twitter. But Koketso, what's happening in your world next?
Yeah, quite a lot happening in my world, coincidentally. So after about, I'm counting, after 19 months, my website is finally about to go live again. When you wear many hats, life is very difficult. And when you're a perfectionist as well, it's even more difficult. So it's basically a blog. I wear many hats, like I mentioned. So I'm trying to squeeze in everything while not being too specific. So that's my first name, surname.com, Koketso Resane.com. That's going live on Monday. So if you enjoy it, great. If you don't, too bad. I didn't ask you. But otherwise, do catch me on Man Patriot again. Podcast is coming back real soon. Apart from that, find me on Twitter as well. I get DMs actually, and I do read most of them, except for the guys selling forex, of course. But do find me on Twitter as well. But fair warning, I do get quite busy. I do have a 9 to 5. I wish there was more of me. But that's another place to find me. But I do tweet daily almost, and I'm not exactly politically correct either. So there's always that.
All right, okay. So I just, if you don't mind staying with me as we say goodbye to Nolu. Nolu, let people know where they can find you, and
Sure. Thank you, Joe, for having me. Listen, I'm not like Koketso. I don't do perfectionism. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm working on it as much as I can. It's a podcast. I think I'm on episode 7. I'm working on it. I'm very busy at the same time. I also recently got myself into a 9 to 5 as well. So therefore, I am quite swamped this moment, but I do record as much as I can. You can find me on Twitter everywhere. I mean, TikTok, can you imagine? I'm there as well. TikTok, not that political. Definitely find me on Twitter when I get to be much political. I'm quite conservative. I do not deal well with wimps or with people who are punks. I just want people who are upright and want to build this country. Cool. Thanks for
Fantastic.
having me, bro. Bye,
You're welcome.
Koketso.
No, I
Cheers.
gotta find you on TikTok when I get off the stream. I gotta see some of your content.
I
Anyway,
need to make an account there.
yeah, you need to catch up, man. We're all on TikTok. Even Sihle is gonna make TikTok. I may have let the cat out of the bag there. Ladies and gentlemen, Nolu, thank you so much, and definitely gonna have you back again soon. So thanks again. Koketso, we end off together because you are the co-host of the show tonight. So yeah, any final thoughts as we end off?
Yeah, look, I mean, on tonight's panel discussion as well, I think it's important to say that women do have all the power. There's a funny thing. So, fair warning, I was that kid who basically used to watch National Geographic, Discovery Channel, all of that. That's probably why I became a history buffin. But I remember watching somewhere, I don't know where, but apparently the male penis ended up being the way it is in response to evolutionary pressure from female genitalia. So that is really the extent to which women have the power. So uh, so yeah, just remember that it really goes that deep. So it's not just at a
No
it's not
pun
just at a
intended.
mental or conceptual, no pun intended, but yeah, it's not just at a conceptual level, but even right down to a physical one. Women do have all the power, and if women then start shunning away weak men, then in turn men will be forced to change. So yeah, all of the stuff that's happening about feminizing the men, etc. If enough women stand up and say, no, that's not what we want, then the men will in turn respond. But if women do go ahead and say, right, I like a man who wears rainbow colored shoes, has rainbow colored hair, and can't walk upright and all of that, then it's going to continue. And there's nothing I can do about it, but as women, there's definitely something the collective can do about it there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't said it better myself, my friend. Once again, Koketso, thank you so much for joining me for 2.5 hours. I took a lot of your time. But thank you so much for co-hosting the show with me. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll definitely have you back as always. Always great hanging out with you. So thank you so much for your analysis and your input and hanging out with me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. And guys, Joe is a great guy. Yeah. I'm just letting you guys know that Joe's good people. So if you're at Joburg and you're ever in Cape Town as well, let Joe know. He'll treat you well. He's treated me and my girlfriend well. So there's always that.
Yeah,
But
no,
otherwise,
we
yeah,
went to one of my favorite burger places in Cape Town when Koketso was here, and I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, let me know when you guys are back in Cape Town, and I'll let you know when I'm in Joburg, and we can definitely hang out again.
great stuff.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say goodbye to Ketsunasa. Cheers, Koketso. Thanks again so much for hanging out with me. I'll chat to you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's pretty much the end of the show. I would like to thank once again Koketso Resane for joining me and co-hosting the show with me. It was really great having you. And I would like to thank Big Daddy Liberty and Nolu Maki for joining me as well and having a very interesting in-depth conversation about absent father, or the problem with absent fathers in South Africa. I think we were honest, and I think we brought a lot of good discussion to the table, and we tried to give some solutions as well. Let me know in the comment section below. Do you agree with what some of my panelists have said? Do you not agree? I see people are saying things already like Joe's a liberal. I kind of am, actually. But then again, the far left would have you believe otherwise. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Helen, you haven't met me in person, so don't judge. I'm kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, I will be back next week. On Thursday. I'll be back on Thursday with Comedians Roast the Headlines. That is going to happen this Thursday. Then I won't be back until the following Thursday. I'm going away this weekend. So I won't be back until the following Thursday. We will be back with Comedians Roast the Headlines. And then the week after that, ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to miss out my interview with Daniel Elof, a lawyer, a very good lawyer in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, he helped me with my defamation case. So we're going to be talking about defamation. We're going to be explaining it. We're going to be talking about the process, what you guys can expect. And busting some myths about defamation. There's a lot of legal eagles out there that think they know what defamation is and how the process works. So let me tell you, those legal eagles don't know anything. So we'll have the man who does defamation in his sleep talking more about that and perhaps helping you to decide when cancel culture bites you and you haven't done anything wrong, you have a chance of fighting back. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for all the likes. Thank you to everybody that listened in. Helen, Matthew, Zach. The list goes on. Voot, Gavin was here. Zulu Warrior Princess, good to see you again. Matthew Dixon, I'm not too keen on him, but it's okay. And of course, everybody else that tuned in tonight, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and my panelists. We'll be back soon. Ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, be kind to one another, and I'll see you at the next one. Cheers.